Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Debrief on this last Friday in 2018. Lots going on. We're following the very latest on a migrant crisis there on the border. Some more migrants dropped off at a bus station in El Paso. Severe weather making its way up and down the East Coast right now and making it a pretty rough day for many, many people. And aliens have landed in New York City. Yeah, for real. But first, the headlines.
Sears has until 4 p.m. Eastern Time Friday to receive bids to get out of bankruptcy. Chairman Eddie Lampert has proposed putting forward more than $4.5 billion for a bid, but has yet to submit the paperwork.
Many CenturyLink customers across the U.S. were without internet Thursday amid a lengthy outage that stretched from New York to California. The outage knocked out 911 emergency call services in parts of western Washington state, and some ATM machines weren't working in Idaho and Montana.
America is now saying goodbye to the country's oldest veteran.
Richard Overton was in his 30s when he volunteered for the Army and served in the all-black Engineer Aviation Battalion. He was at Pearl Harbor, Okinawa, and Iwo Jima, where he said, quote, "I only got out of there by the grace of God." Overton said the secret to a long life was,
you got to keep moving. You don't sit down and watch TV all the time.
He also credits his long life to smoking cigars and drinking whiskey.
And a 71-year-old Frenchman is trying to take a trip in a barrel, not over Niagara Falls, but across the entire Atlantic Ocean. He set off earlier this week in a specially built barrel from Spain's Canary Islands and hopes to finish the voyage in about 3 months.
All right, we're going to get started here on this Friday with the government shutdown, which is entering yet another. It's already been a week-long government shutdown. Tara Palmieri is joining us from Washington. And Tara, it does seem as if this will stretch well into next week.
That's right, Kenneth. It's the 7th day. 800,000 federal workers have been affected, either staying at home or working without pay. And today we spoke to the Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney of the White House, and he says they're in here for the long haul. And if there was any question about if the president was actually going to head to Florida over the holidays like he planned to, he is going to stay here and buckle down. He also said that all negotiations have halted at this point between the White House and the Democrats, and they don't expect that they'll pick up until January 3rd when Nancy Pelosi becomes the Speaker of the House and the Democrats take over the majority. And she promised that the first vote that they have when they are in the majority is to reopen the government, but that bill will not include funding for the border wall, which means it will have a lot of challenges in terms of getting support from Senate Republicans and, of course, the White House. The president still ultimately has the power to veto a bill, and that would keep the government shut down. So it seems that at this point, negotiations have gone to a halt, and the government will be shut down until the new year.
Yeah, and it seems as if the president is doubling down or tripling down. By my count, 5 tweets so far, just
Yes.
in the morning hours alone, all about the southern border.
Right. He's home and he's firing away, and he's calling the Democrats obstructionists. And this is the latest tweet. This is a threat to close down the southern border if he doesn't get the wall. He's also saying that he would cut off funding to 3 Central American countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. He's blaming them for letting these migrants pass through. It's been a lot of attacks against the Democrats. He claims that, Nancy Pelosi is the one calling the shots. She's the one who could fix this, not him. And now it's sort of become a game of who is to blame for the shutdown. But let's not forget that a few weeks ago, President Trump told us he will take the mantle for the shutdown. But as this progresses every single day, you'll see him distance himself away from that. And I'm sure we'll see a lot more tweeting as this has really become a political issue.
It totally has, and it's just such a head scratcher because the Republicans do, for this moment at least, control the White House, the House, and the Senate, but yet
they do need 10 Democrats, though, to pass the bill, and that's the problem in the Senate.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
So.
Tara Palmieri joining us from Washington, D.C. on this Friday. Thanks, Tara. And speaking of the border issue, the Homeland Security Secretary, Nielsen, has been down to the border several times, and she is making another trip down there as well. She plans 2 stops. One of them includes a facility, a holding facility that seems to be overrun right there in Texas. Matt Gutman joined us with the very latest from LA. Matt.
Hey, Candace, that's right. Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen will travel to the El Paso area today. Now, just that area alone has seen a 10-fold increase in migrant families crossing the border. Now, apparently, they're just crossing the border, surrendering to local authorities. And because they've come in such enormous numbers, they have overwhelmed local U.S. authorities there, including both Customs and Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And what we're seeing right now is that ICE specifically has been so inundated, doesn't have the capacity to house these migrants. And because local courts and U.S. courts have dictated that children with families cannot be held for longer than 20 days, they've had to release them. So what they're doing now is just dropping them off in the center of El Paso. We've seen them in city parks and outside bus stations. In cases this week, they have dropped off people at those bus stations. The local police have been called to try to sort things out. They've left 1,600 people in downtown El Paso. Local shelters are crying out, saying you can't do that. You can't leave people during Christmas week out in the middle of the streets in the cold. They've got to be cared for. But those local church groups and shelters that have been typically caring for migrants are also overwhelmed. They don't have any bed spaces left. They're running out of resources. The volunteers are exhausted. And what they've begun to do is put these migrants up in hotels around the area just to give them a shelter and a temporary place to stay. It is a crisis that obviously everybody is talking about. And Secretary Nielsen is also talking about increasing medical care and reassessing the medical programs for specifically children under 10 that might be susceptible to flu. And that is what we believe those 2 children have died for. Now, we heard from the first time from the mother of that 8-year-old boy, Felipe Gomez Alonso. He's also from Guatemala, like 7-year-old Jacqueline, who died 3 weeks ago. She is saying that when he left home, he was healthy, and when he crossed the border, she believed he was healthy. Now, one thing that's very interesting about what she said, they crossed for economic opportunity. They weren't specifically fleeing violence, this family. She also said that the reason her husband chose to go now and bring their son with them is because that essentially they were told there is opportunity. If you bring a family member, a child, it is easier to cross, and that's what indeed happened. Obviously, nobody could have foreseen that that young boy would have died just after 6 days after being detained by Customs and Border Protection. That is also being investigated not only by Customs and Border Protection, but also the Judiciary Committee also plans to have a hearing about that in the coming weeks in the new year. Candace.
Yeah, Matt, you do get the sense that there's sort of the beginning, if it's not already there, of a humanitarian crisis on our southern border that is taking place. To that end, immigration officials are being asked a lot of questions right now about those migrants who were dropped off at a bus station in El Paso. And we get the latest from Joey Carrera of KVIA in El Paso.
Candace, I'm here in El Paso near the U.S.-Mexico border, just on the other side, the Rio Grande and Juarez, Mexico. We know that the Secretary of Homeland Security will be making a stop here at some portion of the border, although officials have not yet disclosed where that will be. Customs and Border Protection has been heavily criticized for the way it handled the deaths of 2 migrant children in its custody. 8-year-old Felipe Gomez Alonso from Guatemala. He died on Christmas Eve from the flu after being detained along with his father for 6 days. The Commissioner for Customs and Border Protection confirmed that Gomez Alonso and his father were transferred to Alamogordo, New Mexico because of overcrowding at detention centers in El Paso. A few weeks earlier, the agency was criticized for not reporting the death of 7-year-old Jacqueline Kahl to Congress for several days. Since then, CBP implemented immediate changes, including welfare checks for migrants 10 and under. The agency will also work to improve housing options for migrants and expedite emergency medical care for those who are sick. Border Patrol has about 1,000 children in its custody across the El Paso sector, which includes West Texas and southern New Mexico. A local shelter says it's costing about $150,000 to house some migrants who are seeking asylum in the United States here in El Paso. Ruben Garcia, the director of the Annunciation House, says ICE releases 2,200 to 2,300 migrants a week, and that the Annunciation House is able to accommodate them, adding that when ICE drops refugees off in the street without warning, it causes problems. He says there's no communication. Garcia is calling on the agency to stop releasing migrants on the street. He works with 15 shelters in El Paso, including hotels he's had to enlist last minute for the recent surge. CBP is working with the Border Regional Advisory Council and 16 hospitals to check every detained migrant child in the region. The Secretary of Homeland Security says the reason for her visit is to review the medical screening processes. The media is not invited to attend her visit. Reporting in El Paso at the U.S.-Mexico border, Joey Carrera.
Our thanks to Joey Carrera there on the border in El Paso, bringing us the very latest. And one thing that is getting the attention right now of the president, the administration, and many people who are following this whole debate about illegal migrants crossing the border is this now manhunt for a cop killer in Southern California, in Newman, California. A corporal there was killed, and right now they're looking for the cop killer, and the suspect, we're told, was in this country illegally. Here's Will Carr. Will.
Good morning, Candace. That manhunt has been going on around the clock. They served a search warrant overnight on a home, but the suspect, who authorities say is allegedly in the country illegally, is still on the run. Here outside of the Newman Police Department, you can see there is a growing memorial. People in this community have been walking up. They've been leaving flowers. They've been leaving balloons. This community has been shattered by this officer's death. We're talking about Corporal Ranil Singh. He was 33 years old, a 7-year veteran of this department. He leaves behind a wife and a 5-month-old son. Take a listen to what the chief had to say.
He will never see his son walk. He doesn't get to hold that little boy, hug his wife, say goodnight anymore because a coward took his life.
The chief talking there in a gut-wrenching press conference. Corporal Singh also leaving behind his K9 Sam. She will officially be retired and go to live with the Singh family. The chief here says there is no way that he will take another loved one from that family. Candace.
Our thanks to Will Carr, Corporal Singh himself, an immigrant to this country. We move on now and to Colorado and to the courtroom that face-to-face that took place between a suspected killer and the parents of that victim. Clayton Sandell gives us more. Clayton.
Hey, Candace. Yeah, what we had here in Colorado was an emergency custody hearing that was set shortly after Patrick Frazee was arrested for Kelsey Barris' murder just 1 week ago today. Frazee showed up in court wearing a green jail jumpsuit and went into the courtroom. The judge closed the hearing so that reporters and the public could not be in there. But what we do know is that Frazee was in there coming face-to-face for the first time since his arrest with Kelsey Barris' parents. Daryl and Cheryl both were there. They were arguing for custody of the 14-month-old daughter, Kaylee, that Barris and Frazee shared. Now, they were engaged but did not live together. And of course, this case began on Thanksgiving Day when Kelsey Barris was last seen in public with her daughter at a Safeway supermarket in Woodland Park, Colorado. Police say that Patrick Frazee was the last person to see Kelsey Barris that day. He was then arrested for her murder. Of course, in between there were all of these mysterious text messages that were sent from her phone suggesting that she was going to be missing work. And so police investigated. The investigation went on for about a month before Frazee was arrested. Now, they say they have not found Kelsey Barris' body, but they do not believe any longer that she is alive. They have found some evidence, they say, in Idaho. They haven't said exactly what that evidence is, but you'll recall that Kelsey's phone pinged in Idaho on November 25th. So we're presuming that that is what they have found, but they haven't officially said. Now, Frazee has not yet entered a plea because he has not been formally charged, but we expect that to happen on Monday when he will be back in court. Candace?
All right. Our thanks to Clayton Sandell there on what looks to be a very cold Denver, Colorado. We're going to switch our gears back over here to the New York State area, New York City. And what was that big big blue light that we saw. Many people saying that those gender reveal parties are now just getting out of control, when we all know it was aliens that were invading Queens, New York last night. Gio Benitez tells us exactly what. Gio.
Hey there, Candace. Yeah, LaGuardia is back in action, but for a good half hour, this airport was just shut down. 14 flights diverted, more than 100 delayed, but those spectacular images instantly went viral overnight. Take a look at them right now, because the New York City skyline just lit up in a supernatural shade of blue, sparking alarms citywide. But what looked like a scene from an alien invasion movie, and it really did, turned out to be an explosion at a Queens power plant. The explosion and fire just knocked out power in the area, and it wreaked havoc at LaGuardia Airport, which lost several runway lights, and air traffic control ran on emergency power. Now, one of the busiest airports in the world, remember, was temporarily shut down right in the middle of that holiday rush. Now, thankfully, the explosion didn't cause any injuries, but Rikers Island, we've learned, here in New York, still doesn't have any hot water or heat. They're hoping to fix that by this afternoon, and police are still investigating. They want to know what caused this, but they do say that this was just a systems failure, not terrorism. Candace?
That indeed, and it does show you the power of social media, because all those images went viral very, very quickly. All right, college football playoffs get underway tomorrow night right here on ESPN, and throughout the process, diehard fans are living right up there on this billboard in San Jose, and we're happy to be joined by two of them again today. This time it's Ilias, who's an Alabama fan. Good day to you, as well as Nancy, who's a Clemson Tiger fan. Who's going to win?
Clemson.
Alabama all day long.
All right, so you guys, we were talking to some of your other comrades who were up there on the billboard yesterday. You've been there now more than 24 hours. It's obviously slightly chilly out there. How has it been for you, Nancy?
You know, it's been a wonderful experience. It's a great opportunity, but it is cold. And I'm being from Florida. It's chilly, especially when the wind blows like it did last night.
Yeah, you have a daughter. Did she think you were insane for doing this? You might be up there for several weeks.
Yeah, I have two daughters. One went to Clemson, one went to Auburn.
Yeah.
And but both of them thought I was very crazy for doing this. But now they're 100% supportive. My one daughter was on Twitter this morning, contacting all the old Clemson football team to see if they would start following me, so we get more support.
All right, no doubt. And I do get a sense, based on Ilias, on your wardrobe, head to toe there, that you're a slight Bama fan. But when you first heard about this, was it an immediate, like, I got to do this?
Exactly. When I got the email, I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. So I applied anyway. And like I was telling the other guys, I forgot about it. So once I got the call, I could not turn this opportunity down, and I'm grateful to be here right now.
Yeah, what do you guys do to pass your time? I mean, there are no football games on right now, no college football games until then. What are you going to do when there's nothing else to do? Play some games, I see, eat some Chick-fil-A?
Oh yes, we have different games and different challenges that we have throughout the day. We sit around, get to know each other better, and talk football, and just having a good time. And this just reminds me of my military days, so that's what I've been enjoying the most.
Yeah, in fact,
they're not that regimented though. They allow us a lot of flexibility.
Do they?
So, like last night, we were tweeting our fans asking for questions because we can interact. And so tonight we're going to try to have a question and answer, a little talk show if we can work it out. And so we're just coming up with things to do and just really, truly, like Lieutenant said, just get to know each other.
I assume you're going to live tweet during the game as well, the games?
Yeah.
Try to, but I'm going to be more focused on the game.
You're going to be more focused on the game.
Me too.
What do you think is What do you think is more stressful, Elias? Being deployed in Iraq as you were for the U.S., or being there and watching your team playing and getting so close to winning it all?
Of course, more stressful in Iraq, but I just thank God every day I survived those days. But my family laugh at me all the time when I do watch the games, because I take it so serious and I a lot of times call plays before the plays even happen. They were like, how do you know that? I'm like, I know football. So I played football in high school. I watched a lot of football, and I just studied the game, and I love the game.
All right. And Nancy, say the Tigers lose. What team would you root for in the final round, the final game?
You know, I'm kind of a diehard fan, and if we were to lose, I'm not sure who I'd pull for, because I actually last year was kind of pulling for Georgia, even though I hate Georgia. Sorry, Georgia fans. But then I ended up pulling for Alabama when Jalen Hurts came out and Tua came in, and Jalen was such a huge fan for Tua. So it'll be in the moment. If we're not there, I'll just wait and see at the time of the game.
All right, we'll see. Well, good luck to all of you. And I say that to your teams as well as to the endurance record that you're going for up there in San Jose. We appreciate it. Of course, the playoffs do get underway right on our sister network, ESPN, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The Clemson and Notre Dame will be first up. Okay, so let's talk about weather, because it has been a mess. There was a storm system that came in from the west, the Pacific Northwest, at the start of the week, and we knew it would make its way east, and it has, and it is causing some problems for many people. Victor Kendo is following the developments from Atlanta.
Candice, what a mess here in Atlanta. The rain has not stopped coming down, leading to a very wet and downright dangerous commute. Several accidents reported this morning, and overnight, high winds ripping down trees, drivers had to be pulled from their inundated cars, all part of this powerful storm that is marching east. Torrential rain wreaking havoc in the south, causing major flooding. In Mississippi, flash flooding, overwhelming cars in Hattiesburg, multiple rescues overnight from cars trapped in water along roadways and highways that were turned into rapid rivers. Homes were nearly submerged. In Birmingham, Alabama, crews were rescuing people from a car underneath an overpass. Possible lightning strikes causing trees to split and fall into a home in Laurel, Mississippi. Inside, the sleeping homeowners say they barely escaped. Heavy rains, strong winds causing a transformer to explode in New Orleans. We're talking about whiteout conditions from the heartland to the Texas Panhandle, leaving cars slipping off roadways, skidding on highways, and overturning like one truck in Nebraska. In Utah, one stretch of freeway had 16 cars involved in crashes. Watch as an officer is struck by a semi in St. Paul as he was pulling over to assist other crashed vehicles. Cars along Minnesota's I-94 showing crash after crash with zero visibility. Unfortunately, here in Atlanta, a lot more rain is on the way. A flood watch remains in effect until tomorrow morning. Candice?
It does seem, Victor, like we've been part of an intense pattern as of late in this December. So where is that storm right now? What impact will it have on our weekend? Rob Marciano with the maps.
Hello, Candice. Great to be with you. We continue to track this week-long Christmas week storm, which started on Christmas Eve on the West Coast and now making its final push here in the east with, for the most part, a cold rain. But it did some serious damage as far as travel goes as it made its way across the Midwest. Look at this video from St. Paul, Minnesota, Wednesday night before the snow turned to rain. Boom. That's a state trooper's car with a dashboard camera that's pulling over to the side to help some people and get hit by a sliding red and white tractor trailer, which then fled the scene. They're actually looking for that guy. Have to see a red semi with a damaged white trailer behind it. Call the state police of Minnesota. Nobody hurt there, by the way. Look at all these advisories still up. Blizzard warnings, winter weather advisories across the Northeast with a little cold air that needs to be scoured out, and flood watches from New Jersey all the way down to the Gulf Coast for heavier rain today as this storm pushes off to the east. Several pulses of heavy rain, as a matter of fact, and streams and rivers are running high, so not taking much to flood as we saw last night in Mississippi. Wanted the white Christmas? Go to the Oklahoma Panhandle. Need 4x4 to get through that stuff. Even with plowed roads, they are snow covered. Albuquerque, the land of Walter White. The snowflakes flying today and flying sideways with the canyon winds really getting ripping. So we could see 50-mile-an-hour winds there in Albuquerque. Most of the heavy snow, though, will be outside of the city. Certainly Santa Fe and Taos will get some. Speaking of Taos and skiing, here's just up the road and across the border in the San Juans, Telluride. Oh my goodness, Revelation Bowl open to some knee-deep powder skiing. Can you believe that? Love your Revy. And for you holiday folks, that a tradition in Winter Park that we love, the Torchlight Parade, Christmas Eve, as skiers and snowboarders make their way down the mountain with torches and fireworks going on behind them. And by the way, Candace, that is a long exposure camera trick. The hill is not on fire. I know that you were concerned about that. It's something to see in person. Hope you're having a great and safe holiday week. Candace, back to you.
The same to you, and thank you for explaining the photography elements that were at play there. My mind is just completely blown out. Can you explain that transformer that blew up the city lights? And what were those really aliens? No, not quite. All right, well, that'll do it for this Friday debrief. Be sure to watch World News Prime, 8 p.m. right here, as well as get the very latest breaking news on the ABC News app. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.